here's the problem with the question that you're asking.
Yeah.
Is that there's two ways to answer a question like that. And we've talked about this before.
We did.
There's an intellectual answer.
Yes.
And then there's the empathetic answer, right?
When something is fresh, when there's been no time to process, you're not going to use logic.
Right. Generally speaking, though, when someone asks this question, like why do bad things happen to good people, or why does God allow the innocent to suffer, right? Someone who asks those questions is already forcing you into the empathetic realm to answer the question. And the reality is you can almost never find truth, or at least full truth, there.
Right, you can't.
You have to escape the empathetic realm and get into the logical, the world of reason, to answer this question fully. But as soon as you go there, you sound unempathetic.
You do,
right?
Sure.
You sound cold and brutal.
Yes.
So, but let's go there for today.
Well, can we just first because I think it's brief. When someone, it's biblical too. When someone's mourning, you mourn with them.
Yeah,
that's the first thing. You cry with them. You sympathize with them, especially when it's someone you know. Like, that's the first thing you do. You don't say, "Well, here's a reason why that happened."
Yeah.
You would never do that.
Right.
You would, if a family member passes, you're going to cry with those people. You're not going to be like, and it's actually can be hurtful sometimes when people are like, oh, they're in a better place. Well, I don't feel that right now.
Right. Yeah. So I don't think I want to address this question at all from the perspective of the victims.
Yeah.
Because I think that you're right. We mourn with those mourners. So let's just give the quick, simple, reasonable, logical answer. Bad people do bad things.
Yeah.
And that's hard for people to sometimes accept, but it's the reality, right? I mean, the history of the world is that bad people do bad things. And when bad people do bad things, sometimes good people get hurt.
Yeah.
And that stinks. But that's reality. Now, we can go from there and kind of shake out, lots of other questions. And, then you say, well, why does God allow that?
Yeah.
Now you're in a whole realm of, sovereignty, free will, choice, all that kind of stuff, which we don't have time to unpack that today, but we can maybe come back to it another time.
Yeah.
But I think for today, I think the best answer really is bad people do bad things and sometimes good people get hurt. But, and here's where we do the Jesus juke, right?
Yeah.
Because we're a church and we're Christians. The worst thing that has ever happened in all of history to a good person was when Jesus was nailed to the cross. And God did something there where a bad person or bad people did a very bad thing to a very good person, and God turned it to good. And he used that to redeem us and to give us eternal life and all of that goodness. Like you said, that doesn't make anybody feel better.
No.
But it does help us to say, okay, if you want to approach this from a Christian worldview, that's your starting point.
And I mean, it's appropriate because we're coming up on Palm Sunday and Easter. And, when you go to church on Easter, if you're not used to it, you're celebrating the death of someone who was a good person, right? I mean, he was fully man. He was fully on earth. He had friends. He had family. Someone dying. It couldn't be kind of weird to think you're celebrating, the death and also the resurrection.
Yeah. Yeah. Perspective helps us a lot, right?
It does.
When we're looking back on something, especially when it's in the distant history, it helps us a lot to understand it better.
So I think that's a really good answer and a really good, way to pose it for people who, like when those kind of events happen. Yep.